This is a damaged bullnose corner that's been patched before, but never really repaired. To those of us who aren't sculptors, finishing drywall on a rounded surface can feel counterintuitive and intimidating. However, in this video, I'll show you some simple steps and technique that I use to get a professional quality finish every time. Rounded corners actually hold up better than squared corners in high traffic areas, which is why you see them a lot in the Southwest and in older remodels. Due to impact or settling of the home, nails work their way out of the flange over time and create movement, which creates cracking. Before adding any mud, the bullnose has to be solid. If the flange can move, the repair will crack no matter how well it's finished. A couple fasteners on each side of the damage locks the shape back in place. Here I'm using an 1 3/8 drywall nail. This one has a smooth shank. The ring shank nails work really well at holding the bullnose in place as well. These metal bullnose corners are soft enough that you can kind of work them like a blacksmith. If they've been smashed in one direction, you can use your hammer to try to beat it back into form before you begin the mudding process. The first coat is about structure, not looks. Hot mud sets hard and gives the repair something to stand on. I start in the middle and work my way out. That way the mud locks into the sides of the repair and it kind of pushes into itself and stands up better. If you try to drag the knife across the whole repair, it leaves behind low spots. Here's the technique most people don't know when it comes to finishing a rounded corner. And this is where we're going to start to think like a sculptor. We're going to load all of our material onto the bullnose. I'm applying it very generously here. I think there might be almost a 1/4 inch of mud built up. So that's all the material I'm going to work with, and then I'm just going to set my knife down in the middle of the bullnose and pull the material outward. You'll notice I always set my knife down in the middle, and that's key, because if you try to go all the way from one side to the other, you're going to leave behind a big mess and you're going to gouge your work. So start in the middle, pull your way out. Here you can see me using my drywall knife as a scraping tool in order to do sort of a rough sanding at this stage. The drywall looks rounded, but it looks rough, and you'll notice some hard lines in it where it looks flat and it betrays that circular finish. So you want to use your edge of your knife just to soften those hard edges. I'm just trying to soften any hard edge down into more of a flatter, rounded edge. Don't use too much pressure or you're going to gouge your work. Here we're moving on to our second coat of hot mud. The first coat is kind of like making the form, and then the second coat is kind of just smoothing it over and getting it dressed. So we're going to fine tune our patch here. We're going to float it out a little bit farther, and we're going to use basically the same technique we did on the first coat. So I've added the topping to the middle of the bullnose here, and then I'm just going to set my knife right in the middle very gently and start smoothing it down in a circular motion. First the whole right side and then the whole left side. It's really easy to put too much pressure. You want to maintain a nice even pressure across the whole knife and across the whole piece of bullnose. And by starting in the middle and working your way to the right, and then starting in the middle and working your way to the left, you can usually cheat that circular look. If you try to go all the way around, you usually end up gouging the work or building up the mud to one side or just losing that circular look. So now I'm working from the other side, pulling into my body, and you can see in order to maintain even pressure as I glide along, I move my whole body rather than trying to do it all in the hand. After finishing our second coat of hot mud, we can see that the dent is gone and the bullnose has its shape back. Once this second coat dries fully, I'll scrape it lightly with my 6-inch knife, looking for any lines or imperfections, and then I'll add a light skim coat of regular premixed joint compound in order to prevent the repairs from flashing when we paint later. Hot mud is much more porous once it dries, and it tends to catch the light differently, and it tends to stand out against regular box mud after it's painted, and it's really hard to get that flashing to go away even after a couple of coats of paint. Here I'm adding that last skim coat of premixed joint compound. It's not as important, the technique on this coat. You just want to cover everything and try to cover up all the imperfections in the drywall. Make sure you touch all the hot mud with a little bit of the premixed joint compound so that it doesn't flash when you paint it. And then just look for any lines or dings or anything like that. Maybe you might need to float a little bump out. Alright, so that skim coat is dried here, and I'm adding the skip trowel texture to the wall. This texture is really popular in the Southwest, and the technique can be a little bit aggravating to learn how to do. But once you get it down, it's really not that bad. Here I'm scraping off the edges to try to get the repair to disappear into the wall. If you can see the start lines of the texture, it's kind of a dead giveaway. Here I'm lightly knocking down the texture I've already put on the wall and just gently trying to work down the rough edges that may be there. Don't put too much pressure here on the knife or you will erase the texture you just put on the wall. Now I'm taking a damp sponge and working my way around the repair, again just trying to disappear it into the existing wall. Blending it. Blend, blend, blend. I like using the damp sponge because it doesn't kick off a lot of dust. I'm often in homes where people are living in there. A sanding sponge is really effective for sanding around these corners. I recommend 200 grit, and I recommend that you don't use too much pressure as you're going, just nice little even strokes so that you don't gouge your work too bad, and go nice and slow and channel your inner Michelangelo. It's time for paint. Here's that piece of bullnose from the beginning of the video. Looking at it now, you can see that whoever repaired it probably just did one coat of mud and just let it dry, never sanded it, and just painted right over it. I might try to take a belt sander to it and sand all that mud off of it. I might just make a video on how to demo bullnose, because I don't want to scrape all that mud off of there. If you found this video helpful, please consider dropping a like, and also consider subscribing for more drywall and maintenance related content. Until next time, happy drywalling.